You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Haunted Histories Show. Now, you're used to hearing the lovely dulcet tones of our Penny G. Morgan, and you're going to. You are going to. She's hiding away in the background at the moment. But tonight we've turned the tables on Penny. I'm going to be interviewing Penny. So if you've got any questions you want to ask her, then, pop her in the chat room. Hello, Penny.
Hello.
Right?
Yeah, this is very weird. I still haven't got used to being the one being interviewed.
Particularly on your own show.
I suppose with the book coming out, I should sort of get used to it by now. But no, I'm still not used to it. Still feels very strange. I feel out of control.
Ah, you don't like being out of control, do you?
I don't. No, I'm a bit of a control freak. Yeah.
I have to say, of all the shows, I never know or care or worry about what happens with Haunted Histories. You've got it someone to control. It's untrue. I just rock up on a Wednesday and think, oh, here she goes. Off she goes.
She's done it again. Yeah, she's got it all sorted. Yeah, that's me.
All I care about is what you're talking about every week, so I can tell everybody what you're talking about. That's kind of it. It's great.
I aim to play. I'm one of those people. I'm like one of those people. If I haven't got stuff in the diary, like work-wise, I can't cope. I can't just leave it until the last minute and go, I'll do this, because I feel like I'm letting myself down and I'm letting people who want to listen down as well. So, yeah, no, I try to be quite organised.
Well, organised isn't the word, because you're pretty booked already for all of next year.
I'm booked up now till the end of March, and I've got some coming in April and May as well that have we're fitting them in at sort of 3-month intervals. So, yeah, I'm not far off for the first sort of 3/4 of next year now as well with shows and ideas for shows that we're just waiting for dates to be booked for. So there's going to be a couple of places we're revisiting, but in a different way. Mm-hmm. Do you want a few spoilers?
Yeah, too right.
All right. Well, our good friend Richard Eastep, his book on Bodmin Jail is going to be out sort of early next year, but I'm going to be doing an interview with him on it in April to talk about the book and also to talk about the investigation that we'll be doing there. Mm-hmm. So we got that. We're going to do a revisit to Malvern Manor. But this time, my guest is going to be Josh Hurd, who is the actual owner of Malvern and the tour guide there, who's a documentary maker. And he's got a new documentary out where they've got half of his group at the Sally House that I talked about last week, and then half of his group at Malvern. And they're going to see if, and this is a fascinating one for me because this is an experiment I've been thinking about, the dynamics of a group, if that affects what the things that happen are. So that's just a couple of them, and then we're going to have our regulars on. I mean, Bill Taboni's going to be back talking about some bits. Who else have I got coming on? Oh, Lee Roberts will be back. Can't keep him away. Paul Stevenson will be back. Loads of different ones we're looking at doing. We probably might look at Villisca again, because that's still got quite a lot to be told about it. So yeah, we've got quite interesting things.
That's the thing with your show though, isn't it? You could probably revisit some of the locations 2 or 3 times and still have more different stuff to talk about.
Well, exactly, and the fact that it's not with the same people I spoke to the first time round.
Yeah.
And you and I both know different people have different experiences of places. So, you know, we can revisit bits of the history, but then look at them in a different way and develop certain areas that I didn't have time to develop before. And so, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And I've got some couple of quite interesting locations I'm going to be going to myself next year. I'm going to be doing an investigation at the Kersal in Southend in February.
Oh, right, yeah.
And obviously you're an Essex bird, you've heard of the Kersal. Well, I've started looking at the history of that for my new book.
I know
it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's an incredible place, actually.
Well, you know the music I'm into. Mm-hmm. I've discovered that Thin Lizzy played their last ever gig at the Kersal.
Yeah. Loads of people
Lizzie.
played at the Kersal. Loads
Oh,
of people.
yeah, but Thin Lizzy is one of my favourite bands. But their last ever gig.
Okay, I love the way you're emphasising this point, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of know.
Yeah,
who
so
Lizzie
what?
are.
Yeah, exactly. Boys are back in town. Rock band. Long hair, loud guitars. But anyone who knows rock would know who I'm talking about. And I think there was an AC/DC album cover. Was actually the photo was taken at the Kersal in 1977. So, excuse me. There's things like that, and this is a place that's I don't think it's ever been investigated. So it's a bit of a different one. So I'll be doing a show on that at some point as well. Yeah, there's some really fascinating places coming out, and it's all good.
Going on to the Kersal a little bit. Before the Kersal was rejuvenated into what it is today, it was derelict for an awful long time.
25 years.
Yeah, and people used to go in an urban explorer in there, and they actually managed to maintain some of the internal, like fixtures and fittings. They renovated it, and it's actually quite an amazing place. Nowadays, it's sort of lost its soul, but when you look at the old photos of what the Kersal used to be, it was gorgeous. It really was gorgeous. And they used to have a wall of death inside there and stuff like that. Yeah,
it's 26 acres worth or something ridiculous. The park, because it was the Kersal Amusement Park, as it was known when it was first developed in 1901. It was actually, it had a circus. It had the ballroom. Yeah. Which had capacity for something like 2,000 dancers or something ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I've actually been reading up on it tonight to start writing on the next book, and it's absolutely fascinating place.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go back to your show, because that's what you've got coming up for the up and coming year. So you're going to be out and about and doing some lives for us, and
hopefully,
you did a little bit of roving reporting. Yourself already this year, didn't you, for us?
I did.
You went to Sage for us, didn't you?
I did. Yes. Got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and left the house at 6 a.m. to get there on time.
Bless her. There's dedication for you, right?
There
guys?
Is dedication for you. The driver was. I was going to get to meet Richard, who I'd spoken to so many times over the phone, and. Yeah, that cow of a boss I've told you about. I didn't want her to be disappointed with me if I was late. So, yeah, it was brilliant. It was the first. I've never done it before.
I think we should host a mutiny over that horrible boss that you've got.
the evil queen. The evil queen.
Is all I can say.
Just don't accept any apples from her. That's all I'll say.
Right, now let's start talking about what you've got up to this year, because you've had an amazing year this year. But you actually had a first birthday this year for Parasearch. You started on the 12th of April in 2017.
Yes. Yep.
So how is you've been going like 18 months pretty much now. How's the Parasearch journey been for you, love? Be nice, I'm the boss, remember.
I can be nice. A learning process. A very, very fast, steep curve learning process about what works and what doesn't. And also how to get guests talking when you can hear them starting to slow down a bit. Without making it too obvious. That's actually, but the biggest thing I've learned is how much background work you do for each show. That's been the thing I think people would not realise, because the background work I do hasn't got any less, even though I've been doing this, it'll be 2 years in next April. It's the background work, if anything, has got more, because I'm thinking of, well, actually, if I knew that about that, then I can link it into that, and then and that's getting more and more. So yeah, it's just the learning process, and how amazing people are, how more people are interested in what I would call the nerdy history stuff than I ever realised.
Yeah.
And just it's just been amazing. I just love the way, it's got me to be able to associate with people from all over the world, because it's this we've all got this common love, if you like, for the paranormal, and a lot of them for history as well. Whether that's from, you're talking about my guest I had who was from Malta, whether you're talking about the guys in Australia, whether you're talking about the guys in America, the UK, Ireland, wherever it is, we've all got a common goal. And that's probably been the thing as well that's really resonated this year, even more so because I've got more confident at approaching people. And how lovely most people are. 99% of people are just absolutely adorable, and they will bend over backwards to help you out. And I don't think that gets highlighted enough in this world.
No, I think sometimes people don't see that side of it. No. They just see the surface crap, as it were. They don't always see the good. And I agree with you totally, because I feel the same way. It's a crazy, amazing, wonderful industry that we're involved in. And you meet some fantastic people. And doing the radio is such an amazing forum to allow us to get that contact. And everybody's so happy to talk, isn't it? I mean, I love that.
A few people I approached back in 2017 who were like, no, I'm not interested. They then came on this year. And when I sort of said to them, and I'm on the phone with them going, why weren't you interested? What? I was scared. And that's the reason. It's not. I mean, there was me thinking, they don't want to do a little podcast. No, they were too nervous. They and now that sort of a few of them have popped their cherry and stuff, they're happy to do them for anyone. And I'm like, well, just remember who your first was. Just remember your first. But it's everyone is
Parasearch.
Popped your para cherry, popped your podcast cherry. Or popped your podcast plum, I suppose you could say. But it's also the fact that I'd say nearly every guest I've had on this year has been appreciative of the research I've done. They've actually we've gone off air and they've been like, right, where did you find that? Can you send it to me? And can you do? And I don't mind doing that, because they've given me their time. I don't mind giving them some of it back, because all I know full well is if I want to talk to them again, there'll be no hesitation. B, a lot of them say, well, when you're over here, you come to this place with us, just come along and and there is an awful lot of mutual respect. So I'd say those are the things I've learned as I've got more confident this year, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. It very much does. Now, throughout your Parasearch journey, just give everybody an idea. How many hours a week do you spend researching for each show?
On researching or finding guests?
No, just the research.
Just the research.
Just the research, the bit you do.
8 to 10 hours.
Easy,
at least.
Right?
Yeah. If I add it up over, because I don't do it all in one go, obviously, because I have a job and children, and probably a good 8 to 10 hours. 8 to 10 hours on a subject I'm reasonably au fait with. Double that if it's an area that I've never looked at before in my life. So one of the shows next week will be on a place in Canada. Next year, will be on a place in Canada. I don't know much about Canada's military history at all. That one will probably be a good 15 to 20 hours worth of work.
And that's the side people don't see, isn't it?
No, I think that's the side people don't realise, that you don't just sort of. I'm not.
Just,
a lot of the
rock
time,
up and go.
Yeah.
Right, tonight we're going to be talking about I don't know, Fort Horsted, and you know it because you don't. It's impossible to know the history. You might know a general outline, but some of the, like you said, some of the information that you spend time finding out about is I just wanted to give people a sort of like, that's with Wes, who's in the chat room, by the way. Good evening, Wes.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, Wes is in the chat room with us.
Hey,
and so is
Wes.
Rosie. So is our lovely Rosie Dawson, who you've done a few shows with as well.
I have. I love the Doors. I love the Doors.
They've become firm friends as well, haven't they?
They have. Well, I hope they have. I don't know if Rosie will say otherwise in the chat room, but
I'm sure she will.
I hope they have. I mean, they were the ones that burst my husband's paranormal investigating cherry. So, he was there. They were his first. But, Wes is the Canadian thing I was talking about, because we're doing a show on somewhere in Canada next year. And although I did tell him something about Canadian history that he didn't know, that he was quite excited when I told him about that, but to do with my granddad. But, I don't think people realise how much time. And that's not even including researching locations to do a show on, finding guests that you could do that show on, booking them, juggling all the dates. Because, you jokingly said I've got most of next year booked out. Not quite, but I try to do at least 4 months in advance so that I don't get any nasty surprises.
Yeah, because you don't like that, do you?
I hate that. I hate it. I hate it like you would not believe. I'm lucky now. That's one of the things, when I haven't done it for so long, I have got emergency guests I can pull in. Yeah. Who will help me out at a push. But I don't like doing that too often, because it makes me think, I'm losing my grip. I've lost control of it. I had it happen a few times this year, as you well know, and you saw the messages I was sending you going, oh my God!
It's all hands on deck. Let's find Penny a guest, everybody.
Talk Penny down off the ledge. Talk Penny down off the ledge. Yeah.
I've got a panicking Penny. It's not good.
She's got 24 hours to get a show done. And
the laugh of it is, I sit here and I chuckle away to myself, because I know if push comes to shove, you could do an hour without a guest, no problem. Do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't want people listening to have to put up with that, though. I mean, God's sake, we want people tuning in, not tuning out.
Well, one of the things people have said to me about you is that they love your sense of humour. Because you do have a very self-deprecating sense of humour sometimes, and very, very... sarcastic, I think, is the way of putting some points in history. You go, well, that doesn't sound very good, does it? Kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? One comes to mind. You was talking about one of the Australian ones with William Taboni. Yeah. And you said a woman would be put away just for reading or something like that. Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah, exactly. You was like, oh God, I want to be put away straight away. Do you know what I mean? I was just, you chuckle along to listening. But as I say, right. Anyway, let's get on to this year, because we've waffled on a bit on that, and we want to have a look at some of the work you've done this year. Okay, so you kicked off on the 3rd of January this year, and we did kind of a revisited show, didn't we? We started with that one, looking back at some of the shows you've done in 2017. And then you went on, and this reads of where's where of the paranormal field, I have to say. You've gone around the world and back again. You've covered... bored.
I get bored easily.
Yeah, you travel a lot, girl. That's all I can say. You don't... Some of the locations you come up with are really quite unexpected. When you tell me, because obviously... you give me an idea of what's coming up, everybody, because I'm the boss. So she says, I'm doing this, and this. I go, yeah, it's fun. But some of the places you've done, I've gone, where? What? And you're not scared to tackle some of the well-known ones either. I mean, you did a show on Mary King's Close, and this is going back to February last year. Mary King's Close.
That was actually, that was one of my early shows back in 2017, I think, wasn't it? No, the original Mary King's.
I don't
Was it
know.
this year?
You did it in February. Yeah, you did it in February. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was last year I did that.
And Mary King actually got in contact with you, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
They were a little bit miffed, weren't they?
They were a little bit miffed, yeah. They said if I remember rightly, it was something along the lines of it was never bricked up because of the plague. And I actually replied back to them and said, if you listen to the show, I said the rumours are it was bricked up due to the plague, but there's no proof of this. Mm-hmm. And I got one back saying, oh, well, we're just trying to dissuade, get rid of that rumour. But if you want to come and visit and do a one-on-one tour of the place, if you're ever up in Edinburgh, just let us know.
Yeah. Which is great, isn't it?
But I'm very careful. If I can't find proof of something, I will say the rumours are. But there's no proof because it is a rumour. But yes, they did get in contact with me. So, yeah, that was I must admit, when that message came through, I was a bit like, oh, shit. Oh God, I'm going to get sued.
Oh God, they don't want to listen to some of the shows that I've done, some of the topics I've covered on this show. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. You then came up with, and this is a blow it out the ballpark kind of moment, where I sat back and was like, jeepers, what is this girl? She is flying now. Because you had Scott Porter from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers on, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Good old Porter. Yes, we talked about Salem.
You did, and I say that was a subject that absolutely fascinated me, Salem, and it was great to listen to you talking with somebody like that about somewhere like Salem. I thought it was absolutely awesome.
Well, they'd done one of their episodes of Haunted Towns in Salem. Mm-hmm. I mean, Scott, actually, funny enough, I'll tell you this, he wanted to talk about Gettysburg. And I was like, well, I did a Gettysburg show quite recently. I'm not talking about Gettysburg again. But he still managed to get in an Abraham Lincoln thing. That they I think it was, I can't remember, it was a EVP or PSB7. And there's something about Lincoln or Abraham came up on it. And he said, what's really weird is we were standing right next to where there's a lock of his hair in a cabinet. But, Scott and I chatted for a couple of hours, as you can probably imagine. I mean, I've got Scott Porter from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, the historian for the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, on the phone. And we were going off on tangents once we'd finished recording, talking about different history. And he was asking me about English stuff, and I was talking to him about American stuff. And, yeah, the Salem one was, it was interesting because there were bits of history that he didn't know that I told him that I'd found, but he was obviously then able to tell me about what actually was, because you only see, I mean, it's funny, there was a post on Facebook about this today as well, like, do you think people will always believe everything they see in the shows on TV? And I said, my biggest bugbear is that people think that those 45 minutes is real, is like, I can't think what they'd call it, but it's real time. Yeah. It's like that's what's actually happening. They don't realise that's like 2 or 3 days worth of footage crammed in 45 minutes. So it was quite interesting to talk to him about what did this happen? Did it really happen in that sort of time frame? What was going on? Like the fact, I think it was when they were in what's now a cinema, and they think they were communicating with Alice Parker, whose husband had accused her of being a witch, and there's something to do with a ghost pig as well, to do with that as well. But he was actually on the lash with his best mate, and the theory is that he accused her of being a witch because she didn't want him going out drinking. So he thought, I'll accuse her of being a witch, it'll get her off my plate. And when Scott was saying this, albeit slightly more politely, in the cinema, his torch switched itself on. And I said to him, I said, give over, someone was touching that. And he went, I kid you not. He said, could you not see my face? He said, I'm not that good an actor. It was a privilege to talk to him. Yeah. Well, it's a privilege to talk to all my guests. But when somebody who's that busy makes time as well because they like what you do. Mm-hmm. That was pretty amazing. But Salem it's made me want to go there. I do someday. Yeah,
I mean, it's a fascinating place. When you look at the witch trials, I think it's one of the well-known witch trials that, from studying it from the Crucible back in school days to, reading about it now. It's a fascinating story, and the different theories coming out of maybe why people were affected and stuff like that, and trying to think of motivations and try and put yourself in that time frame, and it's beyond belief, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the whole witch trial thing from sort of almost Pendle witches, I find it's something that's quite close to my own heart for some reason. And Essex, the county of Essex, is where, you know, the arsehole Matthew Hopkins was from anyway, the Witchfinder General. And so there is an attachment in Essex to witches and witch trials and the maltreatment of them. But it was talking about Salem, and he said the place does have a buzz to it. Mm-hmm. He said there is something about it. But yeah, it was an interesting one because we were talking on a history level, not just an investigation bias.
Yeah, I found it fascinating, that one. I mean, all your shows are fantastic, but we're picking out some of my personal favourites.
Yeah, your personal favourites.
Out of the long list of shows Penny's done this year. Now, another one of mine was a castle in Ireland, Leap Castle, or Leap Castle.
Leap
and
Castle,
you had the amazing Barry Fitzgerald.
Isn't he awesome? I love that man.
Fantastic.
I genuinely love that man. Mm-hmm. Not in a kind of my husband needs to be worried kind of way. I could sit and listen to Barry for hours. His knowledge and his depth of knowledge on things is just mind-blowing. Yeah. And there's no ego. Absolutely no ego at all. That's actually something I'll say about all my guests. I don't get any with egos.
No. I've never come across an ego. Yeah, all the people I've spoken to over the last however many years it's been, I've never had anybody egotistical come to me. I've had people ego not wanting to talk to me because of their ego. And I'm not going to name names, but some very high profile people refuse or go, we'll do it if we provide the questions. And I'm like, no, that's not how it doesn't work that way. Yeah. You know what I mean? So no. But people, you know, everybody we've had on are so accommodating and so easy to talk to. And this is actually one of the things I wanted to get across now is like, you know, like Scott Porter and then obviously Barry, been on TV. These are big kind of profile people in the paranormal that we've had, or you've had on, and we've had on. And they're so knowledgeable. There is so much more to these people than the
what
TV.
You see on the telly.
Exactly. And that particular castle has got so many, you know, elemental rumours or a little demon doggy thing and stuff like that. And it was just so interesting listening to that side, the different side of it, you know, the side of, you know, the historic side of it, basically.
Well, do you want my humour to come out again? My humorous side. I was just glad I had an Irishman telling me how to pronounce some of the stuff because, oh my God, you look at these words in Irish and you're like, no. I was writing some notes on sort of what we might talk about, and I've actually written some of the Irish stuff down phonetically rather than in the Irish because it's like pick a letter and make it sound the complete opposite to whatever that letter actually looks like it should be. So,
I'm with you there, girl.
It's true. I mean, I'd made Barry laugh. If you want to have some inside things on this, when we were chatting, I was saying that when I was younger, I'd said to my mum, I'm going to be going to Dunlogare near Dublin, and my mum's like, "Do you mean Dunleary, you prat?" But it's spelled Dunlogare, but it's pronounced Dunleary, and it's pick a letter and pronounce it completely the opposite to how you think it should be. So but yeah, I mean Barry knows the place very well. He's good friends with Sean Ryan, who owns it. He has got an affinity with the place, but I know the term that he thought was quite funny that he kept chuckling about even once we'd finished was the fact I called the place a shit magnet. He couldn't believe I called it that. I said, but it is. It's been a magnet for shit. Its whole existence. It's been a magnet for shit with all the deaths, the oubliette that's there. I mean, you know, couldn't get anything pretty much more shit to be thrown down there, could you?
Exactly.
All the tribal wars that there was between the is it the O'Banions and I can't remember, and the O'Carrolls and all this. It's a magnet for shit. And he was even chuckling about that when we'd finished talking. That I called Leap Castle a shit magnet. I couldn't think of another way of putting it, really. I thought that would illustrate all the death and destruction. But oubliettes terrify me. the thought of being thrown in an oubliette is absolutely terrifying.
I think people in general, I'll get that word out in a minute, can be, one thing you learn over the time is how horrible they can be to each other.
Yeah, you do. But this is something I'm going to get on my high horse about this, that people seem to have no problem talking about stuff that happened in like the 1500s or the 1400s, or, talking about, I mean, let's be honest, with an oubliette, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it means forgotten room, or forgotten people in room is basically what it means. And these oubliettes were literally a tiny shaft that you would get thrown down, and ordinarily there'd be spikes at the bottom. So you would get thrown down there alive to die on a spike with no food, no water, no light. I think it's in Lepp, or it might be one of the other castles that's got one. There's a sewerage pipe that runs right next to it, so that goes into it as well. And, people could take weeks to die. Mm-hmm. What Barry said about the oubliette at Lepp is that you could actually hear people having a feast through the walls. So you're stuck in this horrible space, potentially skewered, and you could still hear people laughing and joking. But people seem to be all right talking about that. But when you talk about, I don't know, how paupers were treated in the 1800s, the workhouse, everyone's horrified. and that's something that I find quite sort of... Modern history, people seem to get more horrified about what people did than ancient history, but it's still history and it's still maltreatment. And I am sure in 200 years they will look back at what we do now and sort of go, I can't believe they did that. How barbaric. Yeah. It's just, but it is quite sort of there was no, it's one of the things we said in the interview is that with these kind of tribal systems in Ireland, as much as the UK and other parts of the world, death wasn't feared. No. Nobody had any kind of... because life was so precarious. I mean, to live past the age of 40 would have been unheard of. Mm-hmm. Most women would have had, 15 kids, and only 3 of them would have survived to the age of 5. All that kind of stuff. So people were less sort of worried about living because, hey-ho, you could drop down dead tomorrow anyway, so why worry? They'd kill each other. Just... there was no value placed on life, unlike now. And that was one of the things about Lepp that really does resonate. The other thing about Lepp that I found very interesting was the whole Mildred Darby connection, the Gothic writer, who some say is to blame for the more nefarious things that go on there. It's actually who Barry feels is partly responsible for opening some kind of doorway. Yeah. But who knows? Who knows? There was rumours that the elemental that's there was actually summoned by one of the tribes to try and control, to then attack other tribes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean... I think I'd rather use a spear, a bit more controllable than an elemental, but that's one of the beliefs anyway. So, yeah, it's a fascinating place. And that's the other thing when you do shows, you're listening to other people's opinions and belief systems and, theories. They've been to this place, they've looked into it themselves, they've had experiences there, and you're hearing that side of it. It opens up a whole new world of that location. It does, doesn't it? It does. Yeah. How many times I've said I've got to put that on my bucket list. I mean, my bucket list is huge, mainly because of your show. Quite frankly, I'm not going to lie. Maybe we should change it to haunted tour guide or something like that. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of listeners that feel the same way, and that doesn't include just the UK. That's going over. I mean, some of the places you've come across in Australia, I'd never heard of. You know what I mean? But listening to like Sarah Chimasero and Will Taboni and, people that you've spoken to over there, Beth Darlington as well. Yeah. Well, funny enough, her and I talked about Chernobyl. Yeah. We didn't actually talk about somewhere in Australia. We talked about, and she's coming on again next year, and we're actually going to be talking about Countess Bathory's castle in Hungary. Yeah. So, it's with some of them. I mean, with someone like Bill, I approached him because I wanted to do a show on Arradale, because I'd seen something on Arradale Lunatic Asylum. I think I'd seen it on a telly programme, and I thought, that looks an interesting place to talk about. And I think it was Sarah had put me in touch with him, actually. And we got on so well. I was like, any other places we should talk about? And he went, oh, just let me. And he's just given me lists of places to cover, but not just for him, because he knows everyone. I think he knows every single investigator in Australia, that man. And he's like, well, I'll get you someone in Adelaide. I'll get you someone in Perth. I've got someone in Sydney for you. Oh, got some. And I'd say I did Port Arthur in Tasmania. You know, it's brilliant for me because they're places that I would never have thought of. And like you say, you don't know they exist. And I'm loving it for that. And as a knowledge junkie, yeah. But yeah, my to-do list is about, I need to live to about 130, I think, to get them all done.
And win the lottery.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, you mentioned Port Arthur, the show you did on Port Arthur. Led me down a rabbit hole after that show, because I, as some of you may or may not be aware, I do private research as well that I don't really talk about publicly, just for myself, because I'm a bit geeky like that. And I actually found...
every day's a school day, Cal.
Exactly right. And I actually was looking into the area of Port Arthur, and I found some really interesting astrological, geological... links that I've been looking for in regards to, in regards to a private spiritual working thing. It's long and involved and whatnot, but yeah, that came out the back because I thought, that area, let's have a look, and it actually linked, and I was like, oh my god, that's just like crazy.
It's weird how things like that happen.
It was really strange how that came out. And that was off the back of your show. So,
cool.
And there's a massive observatory there as well.
Yeah.
That had found this star system that linked in with what I needed and blah, blah, blah. So, and that came off the back of one of your shows.
You never told me this.
Wow, a lot goes on over here, you know. I get like really rabbit holes. They suck me in and spit me out the other side.
Awesome.
Which, talking of rabbit holes, I was talking to one of my really good friends, Ashley Mortimer, one evening. And this was around, I think when I was talking to him, it was a couple of months before you did the show. And he was talking about a place called Boleskine House.
Yes.
And we were talking in relation to Aleister Crowley, me and Ashley Mortimer. And I actually sent you a message saying, oh, please do a show. Please,
you did,
please do a show on Boleskine.
This was one of your requests. And obviously when the Evil Queen requests something, I can't say no.
And you was like, I've never heard of it. And then he was like, oh my God, this has got rock links.
Not just rock links, rock god links. Yes. Yes.
See, I was going down the Aleister Crowley route on this one, you know, it's everybody. And Penny just went, rock god. Oh my God, I love Kerry.
But the irony was, Ashley has got rock links. I mean, he's a musician. He's worked as a tour manager for rock bands. And so him and I hit it off quite quickly because I've got that sort of, I never worked as a tour manager, but I've played in rock bands. I've been around rock bands since I was like 13. And he didn't actually know that much about the rock link you're talking about until I told him. But then he told me stuff about them that he'd experienced. And yeah, it's one of those weird coincidence things again that they seem to happen, these kind of I loved that show with that. I have to say I do love all my shows, but Ashley, he was so naughty
he's
in that show.
Naughty. He's very naughty.
and I was struggling to keep composed, and a bit like when I interviewed Chris Fleming and Richard Estep at Sage, in the end I was just like, I'm just going to have to go with it and kill myself laughing because I can't do this. But yes, Boleskine House in Scotland, yeah. Even it's past. I mean, the fact that Crowley did buy it because he felt it had loads of mystical energy and stuff. And I think, as Ashley said in the interview, Crowley was going to use it to summon some demon. I can't remember the name of the book. It's a really weird name, but Ashley just rolled off his tongue. There's me looking at it, a bit like with the Irish stuff going. But one of those books. But Crowley made the mistake of summoning the demons before the angels or something along those lines. And the house itself has had an awful lot of bad juju attached to it. But what was even more interesting about it was when I was doing my research on it, the guy who kind of was responsible for it being constructed was the 11th Lord Lovat, Simon Fraser. And he is where the term laughing your head off comes from. Mm-hmm. Because he was executed, I think he was a Jacobite rebel or something, and he was due to be beheaded at Tower Hill in London. And as he was waiting, the platform that had all the spectators on collapsed and killed 20 of them. And apparently he was laughing so hard, he was laughing when they chopped his head off.
Well, if you're going to go, then that's kind of a good way to go.
You've got to go with a giggle. But it's the fact he's a bit of a callous arsehole, to be quite honest. He's laughing because 20 people have just died.
Well, if you're about to have your head chopped off, then it's kind of like, ha,
not helping
take
his
that.
cause, though, isn't he? He's really not helping his cause by laughing at that. But he wasn't meant to be a very nice person, put it that way. He actually got his son. If he was on one, he was like a royal. I think he was the royalist, and he got his son to go on the other side so they could spy on each other or something along those lines. But anyway, but yeah, so Crowley owned this place until I think it was 1913. From 1899 to 1913. But the thing is about Crowley that you don't realise when you look at him, he was quite athletic, and apparently he was an incredibly good mountaineer.
Yeah.
But he also had a killer sense of humour.
Yeah.
Because apparently he used to conduct parties and he'd tell them they were going to go haggis shooting, and haggis was a rare animal. And I remember Ashley telling me this in the interview, and I'm having to mute my mic because I am just corpsing on the end of it at the way he's telling me this story. And I thought Crowley does sound like he was funny. He was. A lot of people just don't realise that. They just see him as the most evil man in Britain. He was funny and incredibly intelligent.
I think with Alistair,
first name terms with Al.
Yeah,
it's Al.
That's it. It's Al. Yeah, with Al.
Crowley. The Crow. There's the Crow. Yeah.
Oh, we're going into the dark mirror realms where we nickname people. With him, it's those photographic images that we all know and love, and they're portrayed to show that darker side of him and him in full regalia and stuff like that. Whereas, like, he was an incredibly charismatic man. I would say probably pure narcissist to get people to do some of the things that he got them to do. But he must have had a full sort of personality, not just evil, but that drew people to him, because he did. He had that ability, and he was incredibly intelligent. I mean, okay, so he pushed everything to the limit, drugs, drink, ritual work, everything. He pushed it to the limit. Why wouldn't he push himself to the limit physically in those terms as well? He did everything to extreme. And that's one thing I think people overlook when they talk about Aleister Crowley, is that he must have had a real... some kind of charm about him to pull the people to him, and almost he was a cult leader. And
that's what I was going to say. I mean, I was watching a program on cults the other day. Actually, it was quite interesting, and they were talking about Waco and Jonestown and the Manson family and all those kind of things. And that was one of the things that struck me, is these leaders of these cults have to have this magnetic personality to be able to hypnotise these people into following them unequivocally. And I don't think a lot of them were as intelligent as Crowley. I think most of them, but narcissism does seem to be, they've got to be narcissists to believe that they are the one and only. You've got to have something going on like that. An ego that's completely out of check. But I can see that I would have probably enjoyed Crowley's company, because some of the stuff he comes out with, when you read his interviews and like things that he's written, it's actually quite funny and quite sort of sarcastic funny as well. But he was a fascinating person. And I mean, obviously Ashley knows so much about him. We could have talked for hours about Crowley on its own. But I wanted to get on to the other person who owned the place, because that's where I could go into my speciality side of things. Can you remember his name, Cal?
Jimmy Page.
Well done. And what band was he in, Kerry?
Oh God,
Led Zeppelin.
Yes,
Led Zeppelin.
Yes, Led Zeppelin. Yes, she does this. This is a theme, should I say, with Parasearch presenters and trying to help me embrace my rock side.
I think I'm the only rock one now, though, on the presenter list. All the others are sort of more pop and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're probably the hardcore rock.
Yeah,
hardest core rock girl.
Well, yeah,
now.
Led Zeppelin, one of the forefront rock, metal rock, whatever you want to call it, bands. But Jimmy Page, their guitarist, who was a big exponent of the occult. He bought the house when he found out that it had been owned by Crowley, and he owned it for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. There isn't much recorded of what he did there, but he was a known Crowleyite. You know, he did collect stuff that was Crowley's. And Ashley and I were talking about it, and he said you wouldn't spend that kind of money on stuff if you weren't practicing as well. And there was an awful lot of bad luck that flew with Led Zeppelin. I mean, the fact their drummer died, the fact there was a car crash. I think it was in Rhodes. I want to say it's in Rhodes, in the Greek island, that Page was actually meant to have been in the car with Robert Plant, who was the singer, should I say, and his family. And for last minute, Page decided to go to Italy. I think he was actually going to Thelema to see the temple of Thelema that was in Italy. And this car that the others were all in went off a cliff in Greece. And Page was supposed to have been in it. It was the last minute he changed his mind. So there's all stuff like that followed them. And one of the beliefs was that because he'd been messing with negative stuff and it was influencing him. Whether he still does it, I don't know. Unfortunately, I've never met him, so I can't ask him. But yeah, there was an awful lot of bad luck. There was good luck followed Led Zeppelin, obviously, with their following and the fact they are one of the iconic rock bands. But they had an awful lot of bad luck. But some of it they did bring on themselves. I mean, there is the story of them being in a hotel room and using a fish to have sex with a woman. Ooh. But there's an actual. I believe it's true as well. They were so high, so off their faces. They took a fish and used it as kind of a sexual implement, this groupie.
Lovely.
So part of me almost thinks they deserve whatever happened to them, but that's just me. No. But yeah, he owned it, and then another family bought it, and it burnt down. But the thing that was most interesting is what it's right next to.
Yes.
I think. Loch Ness. And the fact that reports of Nessie started just after Crowley was there. Yeah,
which I find fascinating from a ritual perspective, you know, from an occult perspective. I find that quite fascinating. I'm actually being called out in the chat room, by the way, by Gemma. She loves AC/DC, so you've got a fellow babe. Yeah, you've got a fellow rock babe on the team as well.
Yay! So. That's all right then. Good girl, Gem. You never told me that, Gem. You should have told me that.
Oh, I'm outdone by the rock babes, I tell you.
We are babes. That is true. That's
very true.
I mean, did anyone see Gemma's live on Facebook with her new friend, Savannah? Go and have a look, because Gemma now has a new friend. Yeah. Savannah.
I have had a quick sneaky peek before she introduced Savannah to the world. It'd be interesting to see.
Gemma, I mean, looked quite beautiful. Savannah, I quite like the look of Savannah, actually, but then again, she likes women, doesn't she? She's meant to be men she doesn't like.
Gemma's always looks beautiful. Anyway.
Gemma does look gorgeous, yeah, cow.
I know, right? So anyway, let's move on. Again, so we're going through the summer, that beautiful, long, hot summer that we had. Oh, that was a hot one this year, wasn't it?
It's lovely. Yes.
And again, you know, you covered some amazing locations throughout the summer. And then you hit it off in August with, oh, God. Now, this isn't a particularly paranormal topic. I would just put that out there. It's not, but it's one that's captured the imagination. And kind of, there are like, people have tried to put a paranormal occult twist on it. And, you know, but whatever way it is, it's fascinated thousands and thousands of people. And if you only have to go on a ripple walk, really, to see the hold of the imagination it holds for people. You know, Jack the Ripper is one of my favourite topics. So it was really, really interesting to see, you know, another ripperologist's take on that. Now, you spoke to the amazing Mike Cavell, didn't you?
I did. Very lucky to be able to class him as a friend now as well, because he is phenomenal. He's just blows my mind, his knowledge. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. And actually, a month later, I got to do the Ripper Walk, and so I had a couple of weird experiences doing a Ripper Walk myself, but which I'll tell you about in a sec. But yeah, that was fascinating. I mean, what was good about it as well is Mike and I did talk a lot about the victims, because a bugbear of mine is everyone talks about the Ripper. They don't tend to know the names of his victims. Mm-hmm. To them, they were just 5 prostitutes who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But there's so much more to these women than that. And in fact, there's a book coming out by, I think her name's Haley or Hallie Rubinold, something like that. And it's actually she's actually gone into all these records about the 5 women. So Mary Ann Nichols, Mary Jane Kelly, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Annie Chapman. Because she sort of said that's exactly how she feels, that everyone talks about him and has in a weird way, people have almost idolised the Ripper. They've painted him to be this something other than the nasty killer that he was. He preyed on down and out women who were struggling. And did deplorable things to them. I mean, you've probably seen them as well. Some of the crime scene photos from then. Yeah, it doesn't look real. It looks like a dummy that's been mocked up. They're not, but you just can't. I still find it hard to fathom what he did, and he wasn't caught.
And the conditions he did it under as well. You've got to remember
that's exactly what I mean. Yeah,
he was working under using that term as a term, not derogatory his work, his methodology at all. Well, it is fascinating though, isn't it? I have to say. It is.
And I can understand why people bring in the paranormal, potentially that he was an alien and he was this, he was that, because some of the things he did, and I found this out when I did the tour actually, because the chap who conducted our tour, he actually knew Mike quite well. And he's a ripperologist, and him and I were talking, and he was saying that supposedly they reckon he managed to get one of the organs out of one of the women in less than 2 minutes without nicking or damaging the surrounding organs. And he said he had one tour when he had a surgeon on the tour, and he asked the surgeon if that was possible. And the surgeon said, well, I've been doing the job 20 odd years and even I would struggle to do it that fast.
Yeah, let alone in the dark.
Let alone in the dark.
Smog, under pressure. It's either pure luck that he was able to do that or something else was at play. But I think when I listened to Mike talking, one of the things that came out for me was this is somebody who he never lets it go. It's always something that it will keep coming back. When we spoke to Jane Harris about Belle in the Witch Elm, she said, although that particular project is done for me, Belle will never go away because people still talk to her about it now and, send her information, or I found this about Belle. Because it will always be, Belle will always be with me, and that story will always be continued. It may not be something I would necessarily revisit and put out there, but when you've been heavily involved in a particular focused research, and Mike was talking about when he had a phone call, and it was somebody who had got some scrapbooks, and it was all newspaper cuttings, and he goes, who knows what information, because a lot of it's gone missing out of the archive, so we'd just like to say that a lot of the original documentation,
crime reports and things,
all has gone missing out of it. A lot of that was to do with the World War and people just taking the letters and all sorts of reasons why a lot of it's gone missing. But he said he got called to this house and they had this like scrapbook. He said, and I was just like, he'd never seen anything like it. Yeah. And he goes, who knows what's lurking in somebody's attic or...
Well, that's actually what I said. I said, you never know what's in someone's eaves in their house or what's in an old trunk up in the loft that you don't know's there. And and I've seen that happen. I've seen stuff that my husband found when he used to do loft conversions in older houses, and like old photos that were 100 odd years old, and the people would be like, well, it's not mine, I don't want it. And so you just never know what is going to be found as the years progress. But that is an interesting one. What was he saying? He said he gets like 3 or 4 emails a year about people who think they're Mary Kelly, reincarnated.
Yeah.
Mary Jane Kelly, who was the only young victim. All the others were in their 40s. She was the only one who was in her 20s and wasn't living in a doss house.
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't living in the lap of luxury, but she wasn't actually living in a boarding house. So it is one of those stories. It's never gonna go away. It's why those tours are packed out every single night of the week. It's why it's people worldwide. If you say to them, "Do you want to do a Jack the Ripper tour?" Yes, it's one of those things. But all I'm trying to do with it is see it as an interesting story, but don't see him as being this mythical savior of women on the game sort of thing. He wasn't. He's a murderer. Quite simple. But it's also it's the women. The fact that when you hear their backstories, you do have a lot more sympathy with them.
Yeah.
And what they were dealing with.
The hardship. And everyone used to say, well, they were drinking. You kind of...
Yes.
To get through it. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
If you actually had to live that life, trust me, I'd be a raging alcoholic too. Just to...
Well, bear in mind, in the East End of London, in the late 1800s, the average age of mortality was 50 to 55.
Yeah.
Out of those, the 5 canonical 5, 4 of them were in their early to mid-40s. So the chances are they were on borrowed time anyway. Most of them had been married. Most of them had either fallen on hard times and the husband had died, or the husband had gone off drinking and dumped them on the street, basically. And what I found quite amazing when I actually did the tour was the fact that they would charge 4p for their services, which worked out as, I think it worked out as like £2.50 now, something like that. And the reason they charged 4p was that's how much a bed in a boarding house would cost for the night. So that's the only reason they were doing it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and can you blame them being drunk as a skunk all the time to deal with that as a life? I can't. I really can't. No. I just find it's one of those that it's quite an emotive. It's an emotional subject, but it's a fascinating one. And yeah, we don't know what's out there still. We don't know what evidence is still out there.
Yeah, and not just Jack the Ripper, but on any other case or location, who knows what will come up, what will be unturfed at some point in the future. And that's what makes history so interesting, isn't it?
It is. So do you have any other questions to ask me?
I do.
Okay.
Gosh, you ain't getting away that easy, girl.
Oh, damn it.
I'll just ask the boss if we can, run over a little bit. Oh, I think we can. So for all the knowledge and the history that you've ever researched and looked into, so let's look at just in the UK for now. What is the most active location that you can back up from your research?
And from personal experience?
Well, yeah, because a lot of it's personal experience.
Strangers Hall in Norwich. Strangers Hall in Norwich. It's not investigated very often. It's got about 800 years of history, I reckon, looking at it. It's one of those buildings, it's layered. So you got, first layer was 1200 and something, then another layer went on 200 years later, then another layer. And it's one of those ones that has bits added to it over the years until about 1800 odd. It's not got anything malevolent associated with it, deaths or plague or anything like that. But it's got so many layers, and it's one of the ones that when I did an investigation there this year, I think I had more happen there than I'd ever had happen before in a short space of time. In fact, I had stuff start happening to me there just when I was walking around before the public started going for the investigation. So far, that has probably been the most... That's one that I would love to get locked up in on my own without anyone else there and see what happened. It's the nearest I've been to being unnerved in a place. and I don't get unnerved. But that place is the nearest I've got to being a little wee bit scared.
Mm-hmm. And you actually did a show on that back in April.
I did, yeah.
Back in April, and you did that with Fright Nights Cambridge, didn't you, Gemma?
That's right, yeah. That's the one location I have been to that I have come close to being scared because of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Ah. Okay, now we have had a question from the lovely Carl. Now, this is about one of his little babies, Fort Horsted. I know, right? Fort Horsted is very close to our Carl Hutchinson's heart.
It is.
And he's asked, in your time that you've spent there and the research you have done on Horsted, what, in your view, is the most active area of the fort and why?
Right, okay. Is Carl listening? Is he in the chat room?
He's not in the chat, but he's probably listening.
Okay. I'm going to throw a curveball. My favourite part of it is where the graffiti is, the pencil graffiti that not many people get to see. The pencil graffiti that's over 100 years old. Mm-hmm. That's my favourite part of it. The bit I found that was most active is basically the break room, where you go to sort of get out, the safe room, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. That was the most active place for me in that place. It's one of, I think it's, my mind's just gone completely blank. It's one of like the old storeroomy type, and I've just completely forgotten what they're called. Anyway, it's the break room. When I was in there and I was on my own in there because of something else that had happened, I wanted to sit on my own for a while. I heard voices in the tunnel, the lighting tunnel that runs down the back of it. I heard noises. I heard, there was just stuff going on the whole 20 minutes I was sitting in there on my own. I'd say as well, the tunnels in that place, there's always someone walking in the tunnels with you. But for me, the most active part was in the break room. And Carl will probably know exactly which bit I'm talking about. Because I've just completely forgotten what it's like one of the, I could look it up on my computer, but then I'd probably lose you. It's one of the areas they would have stored stuff in. And the toilets are next to it. And it's right at the front of the fort. But that was the bit that I found, funnily enough, the most active. And this is something I've said to people. Nobody ever investigates the break room on these investigations.
No.
Yeah, you sit in there on your own, it gets pretty lively. Mm. But yeah, that for me was the most active area, personally. I'm not saying that's the only area I experienced stuff, because I experienced other bits elsewhere. But for me, that was just, it was just activity central when I was sitting in there on my own. I wasn't alone, put it that way. Mm. Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically a whistle-stop tour of some of my favourite shows that you've done throughout this year. I'm not going to be cruel and ask you what your favourites have been this year, because, you know,
I can't pick one child. All my children. I love all my children.
Exactly right. It's so difficult. So you're taking a bit longer to come back to Parasearch next year. Coming back on the 19th, aren't you?
It's the 23rd is my next show back, yeah.
Yeah, week commencing.
I think the 19th is the Monday or the Sunday, isn't it? Yeah.
So what's that? What's your first show you're going to be kicking off 2019?
It's going to be Countess Bathory's house property in Hungary, where she was bricked up and died, with Beth Darlington. It's going to be a really interesting one to research. I'm looking forward to researching that one.
Yeah.
But that's something quite new to me. And I know all the myths about her, but it's going to be quite interesting that'll be a 15 to 20 hour job.
Yeah, I can imagine on that one, because there's huge history surrounding that particular location.
And there's no first-hand accounts either. It's all going to be hearsay, because there's nothing going to be documented. Like one of the things I like is anything that's, say, 1750 onwards, you can find real-life accounts, newspaper articles and everything else. Stuff that's older than that, it's almost impossible. So you have to read a lot of historians' books and see what bits correlate. And yeah, but it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, that's my first show back.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what my favourite show has been this year, but I can tell you one of my favourite locations I was introduced to was.
Go on then.
Landguard Fort.
Mm-hmm. And why?
I just felt at home there. And the fact it was pretty darned active. But I tuned into it straight away. Its history is amazing. The fact it was the first land battle for the Royal Marines in the 1600s, things like that are pretty phenomenal. I just love the place. I just, the minute I walked through the gates, it was like I'm home. And it's only 50 minutes up the road for me, so
even better, right?
Even better. But I do want to say something to you, Kerry, before we go.
Oh, okay.
I want to thank you for being such an amazing evil queen. I want to thank you for giving me the chance to do my Haunted History show every single week and trusting me to run with it. And also for being there when I have one of my little panicky, attacky sort of, oh my God, this isn't working. You're amazing. I wanted to tell you that. Oh. And I hope you have a lovely Christmas.
Oh, thank you so, so much. Well, I have a little surprise for you, darling.
What?
Okay, what? You hear that? Immediately guarded. A few people have sent me some messages for you. So I'm going to end the show by playing these messages to you for people that love and appreciate your show. So on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for being such an amazing presenter.
I can't speak.
And I look forward to hearing more shows that you bring to Parasearch next year. So thank you, and Merry Christmas to you.
It's a deal.
Okay, so enjoy these messages, okay?
Hi, Lee Roberts here from The Hauntings and Haunted Events UK. Just want to wish Penny and Haunted Histories and everyone at Parasearch Radio a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's been a great year. I've been on the show a few times and loved every minute of it with Penny. We always have a good laugh. So I hope to see you again in the new year, and we've got some shows coming up. So Happy New Year and see you in 2019.
Hey Penny, it's Paul here from Haunted Magazine. Dare I say, award-winning Haunted Magazine, as seen on BBC One, Have I Got News For You? Wanted to wish you and your listeners a wonderful Christmas, fantastic New Year. Let's please catch up soon, early in 2019. And finally, don't be normal, be paranormal.
I want to take this opportunity to wish Penny, our favourite radio presenter, a very happy Christmas and a very happy New Year. From Rosie, Stuart and all the team at Simply Ghost Nights. Merry Christmas, Penny.
Hi Penny, this is Sarah from Living Life in Full Spectrum, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and congratulations on a great year of Haunted History episodes. I really enjoyed coming on the show to talk to you about my beloved Black Rock House, and I can't wait to talk to you again in 2019, and I can't wait to hear what you have in store for all of your listeners. Have a great Christmas, and we'll talk to you again next year.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.